there. This is part 7 of my van conversion, the Max fan install tips and tricks. So I'm just going to go right into the what I've done here. Obviously, you already know where you're going to put your fan. You line it up, make sure it's square, and then obviously cut your hole. I've noticed a lot of people, they use jigsaws and things like that, but I would highly recommend using like a grinder with a thin blade. And obviously I have a DeWalt grinder here, which I use for everything. I like the DeWalts. But let me get right into it. So you have your hole. Now, when you drill and you cut out your hole, you need to make sure on the edges here, if you can see, they're rounded. I'll tell you what this butyl tape is. On each of these corners, what you want to do, you can do it a couple different ways. You can take a drill bit and drill the 4 corners. And the reason you want to do that is because you never want, with metal, a sharp edge, because anytime you flex it, the stress in the corner could cause a crack in the metal. So if you ever stand on it or you're installing the fan, you leave a sharp edge. So you want to use a file after you cut it. Use one of these files, like a flat file around the edges, or you can use a round file. Or when you cut the hole out, make sure on each corner you round the corners. Don't leave a sharp corner, because that could definitely cause a leak if you have a sharp edge. And when you flex on this, it'll cause a stress in the corner and a hairline crack. It'll go beyond your lap sealant caulking and can cause a leak. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of times these fans and protrusions in your roof leak, is because they're not round in the corners on this sheet metal. When I cut this out, you can put a drop cloth down there. I highly recommend you put a drop cloth, and like I said, make sure you file the edges down so nothing sharp, you don't get any metal filings coming down, dropping down on into your van, and even after you've got it all hooked up. Butyl tape. I use butyl tape on the end, and obviously up here and down here. And I'll tell you on these, so you do your dry fit, you put it in there, you got your butyl tape on it. Leaves a little bit of a gap, so you have some good sealant in, and you get a good seal. On these ProMasters, they have these ridges here. So what I've done is you draw a line now where your flange comes out to, and as your flange comes out to this point, and you drop it down. Now the sealant, to seal these, you don't want sealant running all the way back through here when you're sealing this, and this is laying flat on your rig. The sealant is just to make sure you have a seal between the flange and the roof. And on this, so you don't have a bunch of lap sealant wasted going back up into here in a big glob, I put these little bridges of butyl tape, so when you do wind up caulking this, going all around, you're just caulking the flange to the flat part of your roof. Anything that goes back into these valleys is just waste and causes a mess if you ever have to replace the fan or anything like that. I tape around the edge for a couple of reasons, not just because it looks nice. So when you put the butyl tape here, or the lap sealant, and you'll smooth it over the ridges here to the flange, it gives you a nice clean edge. Not only that it looks professional when you do that, it also does something else. So when you want to come and you want to, let's say on your yearly maintenance, you come back, you got a crack, you just want to make sure you seal it up again. It leaves a nice edge to where you don't have this big glob going all the way around this, and it's, some places it's a little valley you know, it just looks like a big glob of it going around. It makes a nice clean seal, so if you have maintenance, you got to come back and seal it again. You can actually put sealant over it, and you can do that for about a year, but then after that you need to come back, strip it, and then reapply it probably after about a couple of years. That's why I do the tape opening. You only need about 1/4 inch from your flange from where your flange ends to where the tape, so you don't have to put a whole tube on there. There's no reason for doing that. Make sure you clean. I use some acetone, clean the metal, clean all the way around, make sure it's a good clean surface so the lap sealant will adhere nicely. And when this goes on, obviously you want to pre-drill your holes. It comes with a number of screws going all the way around. Make sure you pre-drill those. And you put obviously the lap sealant. Once it's secured, then once you screw this down, then you would put your lap sealant around. Then on these openings here, it's on the side of the van. This is the side, that's the front, this is the back. So once you have the flange down, you have it screwed down, then you do your lap sealant. Then you have 4 screws, stainless steel screws. You'll open the fan all the way as far as the max fans go. The directions: open the fan up by turning the knob. I believe it's counterclockwise. It'll open it up and allow access to these 4 stainless steel screws that hold the fan body to the flange. And then once you got it in, I would do a wire test. I believe on these max fans, the black is the positive, the white is the negative. So just be aware of that. The flange cover, that is for the cover underneath. Now, I don't have my sealant in. It's not going to be in for about a week. So you'll obviously have to cut that flange down. Another tip I would have for you, use a grinder with a thin blade. And after you measure it, I believe the directions on these max fans say make sure you give a 1/2 inch more clearance than you need. And if you don't have enough clearance, they recommend blocking it, putting in some wood blocks, but I don't think most people have an issue with that. And there's 4 screws for putting in the cover for the max fan. And obviously the cover goes this way up into and that is the seal that you'll see at the bottom of the fan in your rig. Okay. Now, when you do cut this, just to be aware, it kind of melts the edges, but you'll see a little, I guess, plastic dross or boogers around it. Wait till they cool. You can just knock them off. They'll just chip off with your hand, and you get a pretty good cut with the grinder and with a thin blade. Okay, big tip on these. Once you have this all installed, you have the sealant in, the fan's in, everything's looking good, you've done a test on it, open the windows to your rig. Any windows you have in your rig, make sure you open all the windows. Now I'm going to tell you why. This is one of the main reasons why these max fans leak after they're installed. You want to make sure you open all your windows. Like, see, mine are closed right now, and before I seal this, I'm going to open these windows up or leave the van door open. And I'm in a secure shop, so I can do that. Obviously, where you are, it might not be secured, but it's extremely important you open the doors and make sure the windows are open. This is why a lot of these will leak. And the reason they leak, believe it or not, is because once they're installed and you have the lap sealant, everything's secure, when you shut the doors, especially the rear doors or the front doors on these rigs, there's nowhere for the air to escape if the windows are not open. So when you shut, believe it or not, when you shut these doors and it causes pressure in the van, the air has to go somewhere. So what'll happen is, when this is all sealed down to this, the air gets pushed up under the lap sealant, wherever the weakest part is around this flange, and it's usually an hour or so, the lap sealant has already started to set up, and the air gets pushed through here, and it doesn't bond, or the bond is broken between the metal and this flange. And if the air seeps out ever how slightly, when the rain comes, sure enough, it's going to find that opening, because this is where the sealant has set up, and that air gap has caused a breach between your flange, the lap sealant, and your roof. And so that causes the leak. So it's very important you leave your windows open. And I would recommend not even closing any door for at least a couple of days after you have done any type of seal work with lap sealant, because that air, once again, will breach that lap sealant, and it has to go somewhere. Even though there are vents in the van, door vents, things that to that effect, these big back doors, when you close them, is pushing a lot of air and causing a lot of pressure, will break the seal on the flange, the lap sealant, and your roof, and will cause a leak. That's why a lot of these will leak after they're installed, even though they've done everything correctly. Okay, that's it for part 7 of my van, Max Fan install conversion, and I hope to see you on the next one. Be safe and take care.